Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and since it's Women's History Month, I'm here today to talk to you about Dickinson Season 3. This came out in 2021 on Apple Plus, created by that of Alina Smith. Season 3 is a lot more better than Season 2, but it's not as good as Season 1. I've only seen season 3 once in my entirety, while I've seen the other two seasons twice. And when it comes to that of season 3, it feels like a blend of season 1 and season 2. The first half of season 3 feels like that of season 2, whereas the second half feels more in line with that of season 1. You're left scratching your head and asking yourself, what is the point of the first half of season 3? Because you just don't know which direction it's going into. Characters are still somewhat a bit, I don't know, some characters it depends, it's weird. Some characters evolve, some don't. Some go back to their season 1 stats a whole lot faster. However, this is the season and it is the final season, so therefore, because it is the final season, we get to see Emily Dickinson transform herself into that of the woman in white. Something she is known for in her later years as she got older and then later died in real life. Now this show is fictional, but it's loosely based off of fact and some characters and stuff. And so but we don't really know what all is truly true about Emily Dickinson because she lived a very private life. Different historians have tried to piece together her life, and many people have different opinions. The show's creator based this off of one historian, but never asked the permission. And when asked the historian, you think this is real in her life, this and that, and she's like, you know what, I don't know, but there are certain references that emulate that it could be and stuff. So who really truly knows, you know what I'm saying? Personally for me, when it comes to this show, I just wish they would have went more straightforward. I wish they would have left out the humor and the awkwardness and the urban slang and the music, because it kind of was a bit too much in season 2. In season 1, it was okay, but it just took you out the mood and stuff because you really wasn't expecting to know what you was gonna get. And I wish it would have been more of a faithful adaptation and stuff. However, if I was to change really anything, I would keep probably the humor and probably the music. I do like the urban music they play with this, especially when the squad walks out. But all the urban slang they use, dude, what's up? You my bro, man. And yo dog, what's up? All that crap is just weird. It's weird and it takes you out of the show. Especially when you see how they treat the black characters and stuff. And it's just you have all these white people talking this way, but then they treat the black people the way they do. So I never understood why they kept the black characters consistent of how they were back in the Civil War days, but all the other characters just act as urban and modern day as possible. Now they do still have modern day themes and stuff as racism, misogyny, bigotry, stuff like that. And the show always has a way of, sometimes they'll either beat you over the head with it, or they'll have some levity with humor with it and stuff. So every season is like that because this is dealing in a time of the Civil War, around a time when, black people were trying to be free. And even though the Confederacy was trying to stop them from being free, even in places where they were free, they were still treated like crap. And women, of course, had no rights and everything. And so that's one thing I like that the show highlights. But with all the humor and weird modern dayness, it's just weird in a way. I don't know why they went that route. The Great does that, but The Great does it in more humor. They don't use urban slang. They don't use urban music. It's a loosely based show as well, but they tell you factual stuff, but they also bring in a little humor, this and that. Whereas this show, sometimes they go a little overboard with the modern dayness and the humor and stuff. And so this season, ironically, even though Emily is still the main character and we see her transcending that into the woman of white, Season three felt like it wasn't even that much about her. If I had to guess the breakout stars, it would probably be Austin and that of Henry, because they have more character development and more stuff to do because of what Austin's been going through. Because once again, this takes place about a year or so, at least 9 months after the first season. And so, I'm not first season, but 9 months after that, the second season. I hate when they do this time jump stuff because all these characters come back completely different, and so much stuff has been going on, and it's just kind of like, well, we would like to see that. But back to Henry and Austin, it revolves a lot more around them. Austin spiraling out of control, becoming an alcoholic, and that of Henry involved in the Civil War. In fact, this season takes place a lot during that of the Civil War. And it was interesting because I learned so much stuff that I've never learned in school and everything. And, but it's from the perspective of like black soldiers in the Civil War and what they went through. Because you always hear about the white ones, but you never hear about the black ones and stuff. And so, while I still think this season is way better than season 2, it's still not as good as season 1. It does start to pick up a lot in the second half, and then it starts to get more back on Emily's track and everything, and her being a poet and her wanting to isolate herself. But I feel like her wanting to isolate herself really wasn't shown that well, like as to why she decided to distance herself from like reality and the real world and stuff. And it's probably because of what happened in season 2. Whereas if season 2 was more blended in with season 3, it would have made more sense, or it would have happened. In fact, some of the stuff that happened in season 2 should have happened in season 3, in my opinion, and stuff. And she still hallucinates, like always, and everything, but it's like a minor hallucination. And then there's one huge hallucination that I think is just flat out stupid and pointless. And it was just to give a lot of exposition because the creator just forgot to add stuff like this into the show and just ran out of time. And, I think she even said, like, no, that was a different creator. I'm thinking about another show where the creator said she wishes she had more seasons to do something. But of course, this show, I think it just got canceled after the third season because even though a lot of people like it and it is a bit of a hit and it has like nominations and stuff, a lot of people are turned off by it because it's not what they expect. Like with all the like modern day stuff they added to it, it's just kind of like, and people just kind of like whatever. And because episodes are very short, they're only 10 episodes, but they're about 30 minutes long. So it's like you're watching a sitcom at times and stuff. And so I feel like if it was like an hour long and more serious, they would have gotten more into the nitty grittiness of who Emily Dickinson was and stuff. But it's weird because in season 1, she went through so much in 10 episodes, but you felt like you knew more about her than you do in any other season and stuff. And so with that said, let us get into some characters. Let's start off with the squad again. Why not? I always like to start off with them and stuff because they always have the least to do. They're still a group of friends and everything. And the Asian dude, he is gay, but nobody seems to know that, even though he constantly acts gay and he hangs out with tons of female. However, because the Civil War is going on, he's all like, it's always the hot ones that like die, especially the ones I'm attracted to. And people just kind of like, huh? So they did not know he's like that and stuff. As for the one with glasses, she gets locked up in an insane asylum at one point, but then gets taken out. Why? I completely forget. It was a weird episode. The other blonde one who's standing near the dude with the red hair, she is married to him. He works closely with Abraham Lincoln and stuff. And as for the main one, who looks like Beth Bears, I swear to God she does. She is taken out very early in the season. Her and Austin have been hooking up ever since that one kiss in season 2, because Sue has been cheating on him and all this other crap, and he has just spiraled out of control. So he's constantly doing stuff with her, and he's also the godfather of her son. Well, she meets a guy And she breaks things up with Austin, and he doesn't like that. Now, the guy's a little confusing. He has a French name, but she says he's Vietnamese. And so she's gonna move to like his country and stuff like that and start up like a tea shop or something like that. I don't know. And Austin's like, no, no, you can't leave me, blah, blah. She's like, look, I've already got the papers and everything, and I'm heading on the boat and blah, blah, blah. And this is over. So she breaks up with him and she leaves. And that's the end of her. And she leaves very early too. I think probably in the second episode and stuff. And so she was like the leader of the squad. So it sucks that she had to leave. But like I said before, they're barely even in the show. Emily Dickinson, the mother, not the poet, she is going through some woe is me, some sad times because her sister Lavinia, not her daughter, but the one who was named after her, has passed away. And so she is mourning throughout the entire season because of that. And she's kind of back to how she was in that of season 1. She's back to overreacting to everything. When it comes to Austin and Sue's baby, Sue doesn't want her to be around her, and that pisses her off and everything. And she makes everything about her, just like she did in season 1. And she's also back to being like a clean, neat freak and wanting to clean and stuff like that. And she completely is opposed to like, women wanting to vote and all this other stuff. And so she's back again to what she was in season 1. And thank God for that, because I really missed that version of her. But then it gets to a point where she's still upset and mourning to where she decides that when they go to visit an insane asylum, she talks to a crazy lady who's not really crazy. And actually, she's just pretending to be there so she can have a room and place to stay. She pretends to do that at her home just so she can lay in bed and not deal with everything and stuff and have everybody take care of her. The father, he is still where he was in season 2. He gets along with Emily very well, but now he's constantly arguing with Austin because Austin is now a drunk and Austin blames him for everything. The father, Edward, is having heart problems and everything. He's constantly having like passing out and almost having a stroke and all this other stuff because of all the stress and everything else. And Austin's not making it any better. Austin has decided he's going to secede from his family and go to war with his dad and everything and start his own law firm and everything like that. And so the father, with him, when it comes to slavery, nobody really knows what side he's on. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's part of the Whig Party, and that party no longer exists. And he used to be a senator, and he used to be a councilman. But he's no longer that because he's only served 1 term. And so when it comes to that, the Civil War, he decided he's not going to judge people of the South and that of the Confederacy because his brother lives in Georgia. And people's all like, how can you stand up for your brother because he lives in Georgia and he's fighting for the enemy? Or he's not a soldier, but his brother's like, living there. And he's like, he's part of the Confederacy and he's like the enemy. So the townspeople turn on him and everything. And they all like, you have to pick a side. You just can't, you can't support your brother because he is part of the problem. And this is what's going on with us in America today and the last 2 elections. So they kind of beat you over the head with that, but they don't really do too good of a job explaining. Until a Union soldier like dies and everything, he gives like a speech. The Union soldier is a friend of Emily and Austin. This puts him in the good graces once again with the townspeople. They're like, well, we glad you picked the good side and everything. But then they turn on him again when Crunky and everything, who was messing around with the older Lavinia, Aunt Lavinia, and then he gave her syphilis in season 2, and then she died in season 3, and he's trying to marry Emily, but Emily doesn't want him. He's all like, hey man, the Republicans have their eye on you and everything, and we want you to join like our party and give this speech and do this and that. He's all like, no, I don't want to be a Republican and everything. I'm part of the Whig Party. So they literally dismiss him like once again. And when it comes to that of slavery, you never really know what side he is on. His family gets along very well with black people. His family wants slavery to end. And then when one person asks him in season 1, are you going to end slavery? He just doesn't even answer the question. So it's kind of like, even though he thinks it's wrong, he could care less about it and everything and doesn't mind if it actually happens. And probably he probably secretly likes the idea of it, like many politicians and stuff. So you never know really what side he is on. He later pisses off Emily towards the end, because he has her write down his will and testament because his health is deteriorating and he needs a will. He creates like a bunch of like, I think like scholarships and colleges, stuff like that and stuff, but he leaves everything, and I mean everything, to Austin. And Emily's kind of like, yo, what the world, man? You and Austin have been fighting like all year. Austin wants nothing to do with you. And I've been here by your side and everything. And how can you like just like give it to him? He's all like, well, like he's a man. He's the older son. Women at that time were not allowed to own property and everything or own anything. And so like he tells her like if a lawyer or a bank was to see his will, they will rip it up instantly because they will think he's mad and crazy in the head, and like giving all his stuff to like a woman and everything, like his property and land. And then not only that, but Emily and Lavinia are in his will too, to be given to Austin. So Austin has to take care of both of them, and they don't like that, or at least Emily does not like that idea. He's all like, this is just different times, like, because it's how it was really back in those days. You can a woman could not own property, or basically even herself and stuff like that. And when the father dies, it goes to the older brother, if there is an older brother and stuff. And so she is furious with this, and she just distanced herself from him. Now, in real life, he does indeed die from organ failure and stuff. So they did homage that to like, the show. And they started throwing a bit more references for real life stuff into the final season of the show. Because people was kind of like, well, what's fiction? Well, I can't talk. What's fiction and what's factual, Now, in this season, in the Insane Asylum episode, which Kanye West should technically be in, like, why? I don't understand this. Like, Kanye West is nuts in the head, and he's super racist. If Kanye West was a woman, he would have been on a conservatorship or been in a mental ward by now. But I digress. And so anyway, in this episode, he wants to, like, I don't know, like he wants to like get in league with this one insane asylum. And the agreement is like he wants the person in charge of the female insane asylum, they want that of Emily. Because she's so weird and awkwardness, and she's always hallucinating and stuff. And apparently if they admit her, they'll give him something. Well, he refuses to and everything. I can't believe that was the original agreement. He was just going to give his daughter up. When it comes to Edward, Edward's a very complicated character. In season 1, he was very stern, very mean to Emily and everything. She wants to be a poet and wants to publish her stuff. And then by season 2, he's not like that no more. Even in season 1, he smacks the taste out her mouth. And this gets referenced again in season 3, when Sue and Austin are like upset at Emily's father-in-law, like, oh, we all know you used to like abuse Emily and everything, and because he used to smack her around and stuff like that. But it's never shown again since season 1. And I assume he had just stopped doing that, but apparently he was doing it a lot back in the day. Because Emily is so like defiant and stuff like that. And so with him, he's a really odd character to get like invested in. It's like he wants to do the right thing, but not always. And he's an old-fashioned dude who just feels that a woman's place is underneath a man's foot and everything. Because that's how it was back in those days, sadly. Lavinia Vinny. She has reverted completely back to that of season 1. She is now back to being odd, strange, and just dumb as rocks and everything, which is weird because in season 2, they reinvented her to be like intelligent, but also super horny and everything. But in this season, she's back to being stupid again. However, when it is revealed that one of her former boyfriends, because she's had plenty of them, when one of her former boyfriends died in the war, it upsets her so much. Now she's all like, gee, Like, I'm not married. No man can take care of me. I should have married one of my like former boyfriends and everything, but I never did. This causes her to mourn the entire season to the point where she even takes a vow of solidarity in silence and not speak because of all the slain lovers she's had before in the past. And she's just back to her weird, awkward, like self. But she is completely opposed to slavery and she hates the idea of war and stuff. But it's just weird that they will revert her back to season one. I mean, because when they changed her in season two, they gave her more to do. But back now in season three, she's back to really doing nothing and just popping in and popping out and stuff. And I know I said before I didn't like it when they changed everybody's personality in season two, but at least they changed her for like the better and more interesting and stuff. But then they went right back to season one and made her just that side awkward character and everything. And when she's in the insane asylum, she is talking to a woman because this woman got admitted because her husband died, and then it turns out the lady's husband is Lavinia's ex who died, who she was mourning over. And he's all, and the woman's all like, all he could ever talk about with this one woman from town and blah, 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 and stuff like that. At first, Lavinia has no idea who she's talking about until she says the name Vinny, which is her nickname. And then she's kind of like, oh, he was always talking about me, which makes her even more upset now that he's dead and everything. Betty is the wife of Henry, and she's very upset this season because Henry has been missing all season long for over a year, and well, at least 9 months. And it's because she has no idea where he is at. And she feels that he was fleeing because of the uprise he brought with the whole black newspaper thing. But it turns out he is in the South fighting for like the Union and everything. And so this really upsets her. We get more scenes with her than we've ever had before. She's educated, she can read and write, and she's helping this one woman write like the memoirs about her life and everything. I forget the lady, I think it's Sojourner Truth or something like that. It's the woman who was once a slave, but she fled with her kids and to the north. And something happened between her and a white man. I think he wanted to sell her kids or something like that. And she is the first black woman to ever win a lawsuit against a white man, which is something very unheard of back in those days. Pretty much back in the old days, it's like this. If you're white and a man, you won no matter what. Even if you did the bad deed and was found guilty, you always won, especially against people of color. If a person of color or just a woman in general was a witness to something you did, then the testimony does not matter because the court doesn't want to hear about it because you're talking against that of a white man. The world was messed up back then. And it wasn't just America. It was in Canada and it was also in lots of places in Europe. And so she's helping this lady write like her story. But the lady's all like, we don't know where your husband is. He's probably dead. And it's time for you to start dating again. So she makes her go on a date with the mailman, a black mailman. And they're getting ice cream, but Betty is determined that her husband is still alive and one day he will come back and tell the mailman dude, like, look, I'm just not interested in that way. But it still upsets her to the point because the mailman's all like, oh, your husband is alive and everything. He's down in the South in like Georgia or something like that. No, not Georgia, but he's down in the South somewhere fighting in the war. And she had no idea. And so she's pissed because she's all like, oh, he can write government type people, whatever, back here, but he can't write me and my family. He has not written her at all. He's written tons of letters, but has not mailed them off. And so this upsets her. And it gets to the point when Emily's having one of her mental breakdowns. Betty does not want to hear about it. She's like, look, I got my own crap to deal with. In a way, they patch things up. And then towards the end, Betty helps her design her white dress. But in the show, they have Emily to be the one to sew it up off screen, even though Emily does not know how to sew. But Betty is the one who draws it and stuff like that. Betty also helps out in the war by putting together bandages and I forget what they call them. Wife kitchen kits or something like that. Basically, they're sewing kits for military men. So when their uniforms get ripped up and everything, they can like re-sew them back up. And also like with bandages and stuff like that. Because even when your clothes are getting ripped and torn to shreds and you're getting shot, you're supposed to still look neat, apparently back in those days. Sue is still bopping in and out the show. When she's in, she bops in, and when she bops out, she pops completely out the show. And then she comes back, and you're like, oh, I forgot you was even in the show. Well, 9 months has passed, and she is now pregnant and everything. And while she's pregnant, she's still madly in love with that of Emily and wants to raise her baby with that of Emily and not that of Austin. And she even makes references when like talking to the family. They're all like, oh, when the baby is raised and this and that, you're going to name it this and that. She's like, oh, I'm going to do it with Emily. And he's like, wait, what you talking about? Aren't you married to Austin? And she's like, oh, yeah, and stuff like that. So she's back to being more madly in love with that. And Emily could care less about Austin. Why? Because Austin has spiraled out of control and has become a drunk. He's distant, he's cold to her, and he's angry towards her. And he even tells his father and Sue at a party that like, look, I'm gonna start my own law firm, and it's gonna be a divorce law firm, and I plan on divorcing you, Sue. I don't want nothing to do with you. I'm gonna take everything from you, and I'm gonna take our child away from you. And she is upset by this because the only reason why she even married Austin is so she can have a place to stay and live, because women are not allowed to own property and own their own money and stuff like that. So her marriage to him was always kind of fake and out of necessity, which a lot of marriages were back in those days. And even till like the 1950s and stuff. And so, but him and her and Austin are constantly getting into it, even to the point where she tells him, be a man, join the army, at least you have something to do and make a man out of yourself and blah, 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 and this and that. And she doesn't even want him to be around their kid because when she gives birth to the child, because he's a drunk and everything, she's afraid he might drop the baby or something. And it gets to the point where he just doesn't want nothing to do with her no more. Well, they finally decide they're gonna work on their marriage and everything, and they're gonna co-parent and everything, and and share like the experiences of co-parenting and all this and that. But their son has no name. It's been 4 months and they haven't named him yet. Well, they eventually name him after Edward. She even gets him to reconcile with that of his family. And so at some point in the show, once again, she's still, like I said, in love with Emily, and they actually do it and everything. I don't know if it was this season or last season. I think it was last season they did on top of a table in her place. But this season, they just did it like in the bed or something like that. And, she's all like in love with Emily, and she posts one of Emily's poems anonymously in like a newspaper thing and this and that. But then Sue gets really upset because Emily has been corresponding with a colonel, a famous colonel, Thomas Wentworth Higgins and everything. And he's one of those type of dude who hates slavery and all this other stuff. And so they've been writing back and forth because he's also a writer and stuff. And he just loves her poems and she's constantly writing to him. Well, one of her letters to him got mistaken and Sue got it. Sue thought it was for her. And she's all like, oh, Emily, I love this poem and everything. It's always about me and you always inspired and I inspire you and blah, 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 blah. And this like that. Until she finds out who the letter was really written for. And she's all like, you don't even love me no more. Ever since I had this baby of your brother's, you stopped loving me and blah, 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 blah. Dude, it's her brother's wife. Like, of course she's not gonna try to stay in love with her and stuff. But they, of course, always end up doing it. And that always bugs me when they do it. Not because they're two women, but because she is married to Emily's brother. And it's hard to root for somebody like that. Like I've said before, I just don't like Sue. And I get really mad at Emily for always messing around with her brother's like woman and everything. And so like in reality, in real life, they actually end up having 3 kids and stuff. Sue ends up outliving Austin. Austin died in the 60s. He was in his 60s and she died when she was about like 84 and stuff. And she also, I forget, this is the part I kind of skimmed. I don't know if she published, and I don't think she published any of Emily's poems, but people got mad at her about that and stuff. However, she did do literature herself and help like get other stuff published and stuff like that. And I think she explained why she didn't want to get Emily's stuff published and stuff. Because Emily was a very private person and just didn't want her stuff published. Henry has a much bigger role than he's ever had in season 1 and 2. And we now know what he is up to. He is heading to the South to help with that of the Union Army, because he wants black people freed. He never wants the idea of like slave hunters coming from the South and just wrangling up any black person they see, and then just so they can get paid and stuff like that. Because he has a daughter and he has a wife. And in season 1, he was afraid of these men because they were in the North looking for like a fugitive runaway black slave. And he was afraid they just might end up taking him just for the sake of taking. And so when he trots his way all the way to the South and he talks to that of Thomas Wentworth Higginson and everything, a real life colonel who fought in the Union and stuff like that. And he has, it's funny. Thomas acts really weird. Like I said, this show has all this modern urban slang, and Tom is all like, "Yo, dog, oh, bro, what's up, man? Like, like you chilling and everything." Like, it's so weird hearing these people talk like this. And so, like, Thomas has him teach the black soldiers like how to read and write and everything. And this is where we get a lot more stuff about the Civil War and what black people went through, and I had no idea. So when he meets the soldiers, they are the 1st South Carolina Volunteers, the black regiment and stuff. They're just volunteers. They wanted to fight for their country because they want to be free. But they realized something. Living in the North ain't all that cracked up to be. And as we all know, black people really wasn't respected until about the 1980s. And this happened back in like the 1800s and stuff. So, yeah. About 100 years and not much has really changed and stuff. And so we find out. So when he talks to these black soldiers, they really don't want much to do with him because they don't want to read, they don't want to write. And they see him all dressed up fancy and everything, has like a nice name, and they call him something. They call him Buck something, and he's all like, "Why do you keep calling me now? What does that mean?" And he's all basically just a white boy and everything, because of the way he dresses and the way he talks and stuff. This is sadly something that still goes on in black culture today, where if you have a more urban or say ghetto black person, they don't accept more of like, other black people who don't dress, talk, or act like them and stuff, and then vice versa. And, it's really sad within the community that these two group of black people just can't get along with each other because they look down on the other and stuff. And this is how these soldiers look down on him. And they tell him plain and simple, we don't want to read, we don't want to write, we want guns. And I'm just thinking to myself, wait, hold up. If they're soldiers, why don't they have guns? This was a real thing. And not only that, but they said they want to get paid as much as the white people. Black soldiers got paid $10 a month to fight in the Union War, and I think they took $3 from them, so they really only got $7. White soldiers got paid $13 and stuff. The black soldiers, their uniforms were crappy looking. They was ripped, they was torn, there was holes in them, because they basically took uniforms off of dead soldiers and just gave it to them. But they still expected those uniforms to look spotless for like inspection. But how when they're like raggedy like handovers and stuff? Not only that, but back to the whole gun thing. They were not giving guns because white soldiers and military people and government people feared that the black people with the soldiers with the guns would try to kill the white soldiers and all this other stuff. They felt they could not be trusted because of what happened to them and stuff. And so it's kind of like, what was their job? They had crappy job. They had to dig trenches and everything and other like dumb little stuff. And it turns out Harriet Tubman was a nurse and a spy for them and everything. Not mentioned in the show, but I read it in real life. And so they were treated like crap. They're all like, we ain't free. Like they say we free and everything, and we're fighting for them, but they're not treating us like right and everything. They won't even give us, and that's what they keep saying over and over. They just want guns and everything. They want to be able to protect themselves because the Confederate soldiers are heading towards them very soon. So they have him talk to Thomas, and Thomas all like, "Oh, it's on the way. It's on the way. I'm trying to get it done." He's not actually. See, apparently what happened is they have to get approval from the head military general dude, and so they can give the paperwork to Lincoln so he can sign it and give them guns. But they don't want to do that because they fear the black people will rise up and like take their behinds out and stuff. And so Henry, he keeps going back to Thomas and all like, how are these men supposed to like? You're basically putting them up to slaughter and everything, because the emancipation, what was it called? I forget what it's called. It's the emancipation of something. I forget what that phrase is called. Proclamation, the proclamation of the emancipation of it's something. That hasn't even been like signed yet and stuff. And so the black soldiers just were not treated properly. And in fact, this year in 2022, those same black soldiers in the Union are just now being honored and everything. All this freaking time, and they're just now being honored. I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. So Thomas tells them that there's a shipment of guns coming. Now the person who's supplying the guns, they don't know who's in charge of what, this and that. So he tells Henry to tell the black soldiers, go to the shipment, lie to them, take the guns and bring them back over here, and then you can have guns, because he can't forcibly give them guns and everything, because that would go against orders. But if they stole them themselves, then of course they will all get in trouble, but then they won't get in much trouble as he will for actually giving them to them. And so that's what they do. So while there, Henry also teaches them how to sew and fix up their uniforms and everything so they can look more presentable, because if they don't, they're really going to get it. Well, they take the guns, and the next morning when the general or the colonel wakes up and everything, they're all gone. He don't know where they're at. So he thinks they just ran off with the guns. But it turns out they ambushed the Confederate soldiers and took them all out. And while they're celebrating, getting drunk and everything, Thomas comes to them. He's all like, I'm taking a sabbatical and everything, and I'm heading back to the town where Henry's at and everything. And so Henry tells him, can you give like all these letters to my wife? See, Henry's been writing his wife every day, but he just won't send the letters off for some reason. He wants his family to kind of like forget him, because he feels like, like he put his family in harm's way and stuff like that. And, it's really amazing what those black soldiers went through. And even after they helped win the war, they still got treated like crap for over 100 years and stuff. And it's just low down how they treated them and stuff. And there was something. Oh, also, this is back with the awkwardness and stuff. One of the black soldiers' name is Michael Jordan. And so the other dude's all like, oh, I can see it now. I'm getting visions in my head. People will line up in stadiums just to see you. Talking about the real Michael Jordan. He's all like, you're going to have a fancy shoe and something's going to say, just do it. Stuff like that. And like, it's just weird that they do this weird awkwardness stuff in like the show. The Emancipation Proclamation. That's it. Now I remember. Okay, Austin. Austin has been losing it all season. After finding out that he had a kid through a miscarriage with Sue last season and she's been cheating, he has spiraled out of control. He is constantly drinking every day. He's always arguing with his father. When his father nearly dies of a heart attack, he just leaves him there to fall on the ground. He has decided and even told Emily, pick a side, me or a father. Well, Emily picks her father, and he's just kind of like, dude, Dad's a terrible person. He has let me, you, and Lavinia down. He controls our life and won't let us do anything. Because back in season 1, Austin wanted to go to Massachusetts or something like that, and his father refused. Now, this happened in real life. Austin wanted to leave with Sue and go to like a different state, but his father refused and made him work in his law firm and everything. As for Emily, he did not want her to get her stuff published and stuff. And they even bring up that his father used to smack Emily around a lot, which we saw in season one in one episode. And so he doesn't understand why Emily would stay with him for, and nobody else can, even I can't, and stuff. Because, like I said, they wrote her so differently in the last two seasons. And even Lavinia and Sue's all like, Austin's right about your father and stuff. Well, at least Lavinia is. But Sue is all like, you have to like work things out, blah blah stuff like that. Well, I already told you Austin was clickety clacking with the leader of the squad and stuff, and she left him. And so like when the child is born, he's still like a drunken mess, and like he is spiraling more and more out of control, especially when Frazier died, his friend, the one that Emily kept seeing as a ghost in season 2. Well, Austin has now gotten his draft papers, but he does not want to go fight in the war. And so he talks to that one girl's like husband, the other blonde girl, and he's all like, dude, you're rich. And like your father's a lawyer, you're a lawyer. Make stuff happen. So we see Austin at a bar, and he bribes an Irish man to take his place in the war, so he didn't want to fight. Now this stuff did happen a lot back in the olden days, where people would use their wealth and money to get out of the draft. Or they'll come up with some lame medical excuse or something. And so when George, the dude who was in love with Emily back in the day in season 1, who was cool with slavery and stuff, that caused her to stop being friends with him, he has now been drafted. He's all like, I'm surprised you haven't been drafted. Like pretty much every guy in town has. And then Austin confesses to that of Sue and George that he bribed that Irishman. They seem okay with that. I'm like, how? Anyways, this now causes him to get his act back together, but he's still at war with the family. But he has stopped like drinking and stuff. And so him and Sue, like I said, are gonna co-raise like the child who they still have not named after 4 months. And so like, but they finally named him Edward and stuff. And so then all of a sudden he's back to normal, just like that. But of course, so many months have passed. And now that he's back to normal, him and Emily are back to getting along and all this other stuff. And it's just kind of weird how everything happens so quickly because it only had 10 episodes and 30 minutes long. Man, I still can't believe Austin this season with the whole drunkenness, him cheating. Well, then again, his wife cheated on him. So, that's like revenge cheating and stuff. But when he was drafted into like the army, he like just like completely got out of it by bribing somebody. And it's like there are those soldiers that like his friends are like willing to fight there and die and stuff, and he's just like cowarding out. But at least he admitted he's a coward. It reminds me of that one grumpy guy with the beard from Dancing with the Stars, Maxim Smirkowski or something like that. When the Ukraine war broke out, all like men were supposed to fight in like the war and stuff, and he fled back to like America. Now he does have dual citizenship in America, and it's like, but he was born over there and he lived most of his life in America since he was a teenager. But literally he just kept recording and talking about how like, oh, the war over here is so bad. And he literally tried to flee, but got arrested, and then flee the second time and made it back to like America. And it's kind of like, dude, like your president gave you an order about all men 18 and up have to like fight in this war and everything. And he's just like, this dude has so much attitude. That's the thing. He has so much attitude on Dancing with the Stars. But when push came to shove, he fled. And it's just like, there were other people from that country who are celebrities, like a soccer player, a beauty pageant model lady. She went back and they flew back and they fought over there. Like, heck, we all saw the picture of the old lady with an assault rifle in her hand, willing to die for her country. And this dude with so much attitude fled. And it's like, and if he's willing to flee from his own home country back to his second country, it makes you wonder if America was ever attacked by like a foreign enemy, he'll probably flee to Canada or something like that. Emily is very interesting this season. Well, she's interesting in every season. And so Emily this season keeps seeing a bird and seeing death. She keeps imagining that she is in the war and she's fighting for the soldiers. Her independence of being a woman and all this other stuff has kind of still diminished, just like it did in season 2. And there's not really much to say about her this season because it felt like she wasn't even really in the show that much or even really did much at all. She only meets death twice and they're still cool and everything. And so, but she keeps having all this imagery of like, dead soldiers and dead people and all this other stuff. And so, like I already told you about, like how her and Sue are still in love with each other, and but Sue is still married to like her brother and everything. And then they clickety clack and all this other stuff. But then not Sue, but Emily, like I said, has taken her father's side, which is kind of weird because if you watch season 1, it's just not like that. And then when she finds out he's gonna give everything to Austin, this causes her to be pissed. And then she goes to Austin and tells him, you was right about father and we need to band against him and all this other stuff and blah, blah, blah. But of course, can't do that because this holidays were back then. But she tells Austin, promise me that me and Lavinia will not be your property and all this other stuff because, and all this other crap and stuff. Well, so far in this season, Emily is not in love with no man, but she keeps writing that of Thomas and everything. He is really inspiring her, and she is inspiring him. And so, like, in a very weird and awkward hallucination that takes up most of the episode, her and Lavinia travel to that of the future, the 1950s to be exact. And Emily is very shocked and surprised to see that, so much has changed for women. There are now women colleges and everything. They are allowed to like wear pants and just like all kind of other stuff that Emily and them not allowed to do. And then she finds out more about her life and what has happened. She's all like, you're one of the greatest poets of all time and your poems have been published. And so she looks at Lavinia and she's all like, I thought I told you to burn my poems when I die. Now, this is part of what I told you in season 1. In real life, when Emily Dickinson secluded herself in her home, she told, her maid and stuff like that to burn all my poems when I die. The maid did not. And her and Lavinia in real life published all her poems after Emily's death. And so Lavinia tells her, well, the world needs to know who you are and this and that. And then so her and the future lady, who's played by that SNL lady who plays Britney Spears at times, she starts talking about like, I'm in the insane asylum and I'm a little crazy and this and that. And started telling Emily more and more about her life, talking about how you wear white and all this other stuff. And so this is now what's supposed to influence Emily to become the woman she is later on in life. So basically, since they didn't really show all this in the show in the previous seasons, they're kind of like dumping it in as much as they can and all this other crap in a weird kind of way. In a way, they don't like the future for whatever reason and they go back into the past. And so like Lavinia's all like, what the world are you talking about? Like, I literally came to you crying and about my ex-boyfriends dying in the war. And then you started talking about jibber jabberish and stuff like that. Oh, also, future lady reveals to her that, hey, Emily, you're a lesbian and everything. And Lavinia, or fake Lavinia, hallucination of Lavinia, is all like, what? They don't know what the word lesbian is. They're like, what? You like girls and blah, blah, blah. I kind of always knew. Anyway, back in the real life, apparently, Emily hallucinated everything, like always, but she also hallucinated Lavinia going to the future with her. Now, this is a smarter way to do it as opposed to season 2 in the barn dance, when Emily hallucinated being invisible, but then Austin's the only person who can see her. But her and Austin really did have a conversation, even though she's not really there because the other characters can't see her. And they think Austin's talking to an invisible person. And then also when she sees Sue doing it with Samuel, and then it's kind of like, well, was that real or not? But it turns out it was. So that was always confusing in season 2. So at least in this time, they corrected that by saying Lavinia was also hallucination as well. And that's what they should have did with the whole Austin and Sue thing, but they didn't in the last season. So anyways, she's still pissed at her dad, and like, so everything's cool with her and Austin and Sue and all this other crap. And she has decided to go to bed and is all like, you know what? I want to make a dress. So they start designing it. And Emily's like, I want it to be white. I want the buttons to be like in the front because she hates the idea of unbuttoning it from the back and she doesn't want a corset. And she just wants everything to flow down and all this other stuff and blah, 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 and stuff like that. Well, Thomas has now come into town. He wants to meet Emily and everything. The whole family's ecstatic that he's there. They think that, oh my God, maybe he might marry her or something like that. And so Maggie, the maid, goes to get Emily. It's all like, he's here to see. And she's like, what? Why is he here? I don't want him to be here. Like, I just wanted to write letters to him and everything. And I'm not ready to see him. So, needless to say, Emily stands him up. And so, like, because now she's getting to that secluded stage in her life because, they really didn't do much of that in the show. And then we see the final scenes of the show, her dressed in white. And because she had a dream of everybody dying and everything like that from the war when she was wearing a white dress, but the white dress was illuminated in red. And so, like, after one last vision with, like, death, she secludes herself in her room. We see her dressed in white, and then we see as time is passing by, her still sitting down at that desk and just writing poems, wearing different outfits, but make sure that all those white fit have like a tad bit of white in them. Some do, some don't. And then we just keep seeing her writing and writing and writing as time is just going by, giving us the impression that she has secluded herself in her home. And then the final scenes, we see her dressed in white on a beach and just walking out on the sand, and she's writing about mermaids in the basement, and she can see the mermaids, and she hops on a boat and she paddles towards the mermaids, and a big smile is on her face. And the show ends, and it ends with Emily Dickinson becoming who she is, a secluded famous poet dressed in white. And then the show just ends. And the show's not perfect. It is different and it is quirky, but it is entertaining nevertheless. I still prefer season one over everything else, but the other two seasons are alright. Third is better than season two, but not by much. But it is very informative of how world was back then and stuff like that. Things you just don't learn about in like school unless you look it up online and stuff like that. And she is a very unique and interesting character, and the show helped bring that out more in a fictional light. And I just wish it was more factual, though. But like I said before, a lot of people don't know much about her because she is very private. She has never married a man. She has never had kids. And, she spent like her final days just being by herself, writing poetry and being dressed in white. Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.